I will finish it. What did you say? Why Databricks is forcing me to use their own interface when I'm developing my codes? I'm tired of notebook experience and I'm looking for modularizing my codes using Databricks, but out of Databricks. No one is forcing you to use Databricks. You can still use Databricks on your local machine through your own IDE, through something called DBX. Why you talk like that? Why you talk like that? It was written in video script to talk like this. So you mean now I can submit my codes from my local machine to Databricks workspace? Yes, you can. You must show it to me now. Okay, then. Let's go. Hello everyone, this is MG and welcome to another video which we're going to talk about how you can still leverage great capabilities of Databricks but without using Databricks interface. You might have asked yourself that, well, I have developed great notebooks in Databricks but I prefer to have them modularized with, let's say, .py codes as I'm going towards production, and even somehow being able to develop my codes using my own local IDE like VS Code that you might have in your local machine. So the answer is it really doable? So the question is it really doable? And the answer is yes, you can, through something called DBX, which is the extended version of Databricks CLI developed by Databricks Lab, that you can leverage it to sort of execute your locally developed codes to Databricks and even utilize DBX in CI/CD pipelines to submit your jobs and codes and modularize codes to Databricks using DBX. This is a pretty cool feature, so make sure you're tuning in and let's check it out. Before we start, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will get notified for the next video. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. I'm also highly thankful of the person who suggested the topic of this video as noted in the comment sections. So as always, please write down your comments and suggestions in the video comment section, and I'm always welcoming any nice ideas coming from you to create contents. Thank you. Alright, let's just start talking about what is DBX, and before we get hands-on and check out further, we're gonna first understand what gonna be the benefits and what I'm lacking, so I'm looking for a solution for that specific gap through DBX and what DBX is trying to resolve, right? So if you have already used Databricks on Azure or any other cloud provider, you might have already leveraged the great capabilities of a Spark cluster, and one of the main way that you can sort of start developing your codes is certainly notebooks. So notebooks are great ways to have interactive development. If I'm a data scientist, I can quickly prototype a code, write down each single portion of my code in a cell and execute and check out the results properly, right? And I can then schedule my sort of notebooks in something called workflow or Databricks job, so they can run daily, weekly, hourly, whatever you schedule. And you're always leveraging clusters, so your jobs using job clusters, your notebooks are using interactive clusters. But the challenge is, or the question is, can I leverage these capabilities of Databricks like Spark, distributed processing, but not necessarily working with Databricks workspace? I want to use my own IDE that I have on my local machine. Let's say here I have VS Code, right? And the reason that I want to use my local IDE is not because I don't like Databricks workspace or frontend. The reason is sometimes in your local machine that you're using your IDE connected to your local machine, you have your codes in a modularized way, which is the best practice for going all the way to production. So you have so many .py codes. As an example, let me do not highlight it. So you have your .py codes here for your ETL job, for ML, for featureization, and you want to sort of orchestrate this workflow beyond just a notebook experience through a modularized .py experience here. And then you have your unit tests, and you want to validate these Python codes that you have developed on your local machine without running on Databricks. For example, you just want to test the functionality of these codes. So why are you going to bother and do them in Databricks if on your local machine your IDE can work properly? But then the question would be, okay, when I'm happy with these codes, I don't want to run them or productionize them in my local machine. I should be able to actually push these codes to get executed to Databricks back. So now the question would be, how can I develop my codes in my local machine using my favorite IDE, but is still being able to, from my local machine, execute these codes to my Databricks cluster, right? Not only that, even when I'm developing these modularized notebooks or codes, I want to see these codes appear in my Databricks workspace as well in a real-time sync manner. Real-time sync. So when you develop a code, you should see the exact sync code on you're developing code on your local machine. You should see that your code getting real-time sync in Databricks workspace. Now the answer is the solution. Okay, the question is, how can I achieve this? And the answer is DBX. So from DBX, you can submit your codes from your local machine, develop your codes in your own IDE, but it's still being able to connect and execute those in a Databricks cluster. Plus, with using DBX sync, you can also sync your local machine codes to Databricks. Is it the only benefit of Databricks? No. Not only you can now extend Databricks capabilities out of Databricks workspace, coming to your own local machine to your IDE, but also DBX can help you to orchestrate the workflow of your development for your CI/CD, for your DevOps. How? Let me give you an example. When you have all these codes tested and developed and executed in Databricks, well, you want to have these codes in the GitHub repository, right? Or Azure DevOps repository, any CI/CD tool, GitHub repo. And then from here, if someone approves your code, so your code's gonna be in the master branch. And then from this master branch, you wanna then execute these codes that you have developed in your development environment. You wanna, let's say, deploy it in a staging environment, which is another Databricks DBR. DBR here stands for Databricks. And then you wanna deploy the same codes after getting approved in a staging to prod or production, which is another Databricks workspace. Let's say call it prod DBR. Now, how can I then deploy these codes that I have from my repository to all these environments? Again, DBX can be helpful here as well. So DBX can not only orchestrate your local to Databricks workspace, but also it can navigate and being used to push your codes from one local machine or one GitHub repository to multiple Databricks workspaces in a staging and prod. So long story short, then what is DBX? Is it a software? Is it a platform? Is it a UI? Simply DBX is just extended version of Databricks CLI. So if you have used CLI, the command line of Databricks that you can control jobs and stuff, the same thing, but this one is more extended, more advanced, so I would say, and some more functionalities. It will come with some code templates that I'm going to show you quickly, that how you can do all these navigations we talked about. Okay, so at least now we understand what is the gap that DBX trying to sort of resolve and sort of the high level benefits. But let me show you their actually official website. There you go. So DBX has been developed by Databricks Lab. What does that mean? Well, this is not like an official tool that Databricks has announced. So that means Databricks doesn't provide customer support for DBX related issues. But okay, the question is, if I face up with issues with DBX in my workflow, where should I reach out? Well, just simply can go to the GitHub repository of DBX and create, let's say, an issue or ticket, or write down in the GitHub repository that report there's an issue that you're facing, so hopefully someone will get attached and sort of resolve it for you. So now if I go to the intro, let me see, there you go. So a couple of things. I mentioned that DBX is the extended version of Databricks CLI, so they're not really identical. DBX is vehemently based on Databricks CLI with extended capabilities. So is DBX equivalent to MLflow CLI? Well, no. MLflow is sort of relevant to most machine learning operation stuff with ML flow. DBX might use some of the capabilities, but they are not really identical. What is the other capability? What is the other comparison? Databricks Terraform Provider. Well, that one is mainly for infrastructure, so do not confuse this with DBX version of CLI. And lastly, Databricks Stack CLI. It's for the stack management of bunch of stacks of objects with Databricks. So again, this one is also different than the DBX CLI. Now, we talked about high level about the capabilities and the benefits of DBX in the whiteboard, but here in their website they have in a very nice way sort of distinguished the main capabilities or different scenarios that you can leverage DBX. I already talked about the fact that if you have your own IDE, let's say your VS Code in your local machine, you have developed your modularized Python codes from your local machine, you can execute your notebooks as a job or your codes as a job, let's say in Databricks, which you're gonna do that actually as a quick start with this video, and we get hands-on with it. Or if you wanna, even for not just for my .py codes, for even notebooks, if you have the same thing, you can have them executed. I talked about CI/CD DevOps. I mentioned you that because you can create profiles for your DBX projects, then the same codes can be orchestrated in multiple Databricks environments to sort of simulate for you the CI/CD progress. That here are some great starters for you that you can pick one, start with it based on your choice and of course the requirement. So let's quickly start with the first one, which is starting developing a code that I have, a sample ETL workload that I have run my unit tests in my local machine, and now I can execute them in Databricks as a job without even opening Databricks, right? So let's do this. All right, here I have already installed Anaconda prompt. That's an easy sort of a way to manage my packages and start writing on my command lines here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is creating a Conda environment, right? And then gonna activate it. So let's say here I want to create a Conda environment, call it MG as an example, using Python 3.9. I hit enter. There you go. It is creating my environment. I'm gonna say yes. And then what I'm gonna do after creating this environment, I'm gonna activate this Conda environment. So let's wait a bit. There you go. All good. Then I'm gonna say Conda activate MG. There you go. Now I am inside my MG Conda environment. So the first thing that I need to install is installing OpenJDK for some local Apache Spark test in case I have Apache Spark unit test running in. So I have to have this library installed on my local environment. So in order to do so, you can just simply, let me actually copy it here and paste conda install conda fork OpenJDK with the version specified. Let's wait a bit, and you can guess what is next. So the next step will be installing DBX. DBX, like other Python packages, you can just simply say pip install DBX, and we should be able to access it after. So let's wait for finishing this. There you go. And that's it. Pip install DBX. Okay, it should be pretty fast. All right. Now, what is next step? Well, we talked about the fact that with DBX I can connect my local environment IDE to Databricks. But you might question how you're going to authenticate to Databricks. Well, as you know, in Databricks you can generate token, and you have to generate token actually for here to authenticate to Databricks through DBX. If you don't know how to do so, I can quickly show you how you can create a token. Here you are. Just open your Databricks workspace, go to the user settings here, and then you will see this page, generate token. It will give you a token, and just copy this. Also, you need to copy one more thing. So token is needed for authentication plus the URL of your Databricks, right? So on the upper side of your browser, there is a URL starting with HTTP. For example, for me, I start with ADB. I'm using Azure Databricks, all the way .NET dash a question mark O equal to something, an ID. So copy that part plus your token that you're generating, and I'm gonna tell you where you will need them. Okay, let's go back to my Anaconda environment, And now the command line that I'm going to execute is database configuration. This is the part that I want to create my connection to Databricks. Here is a key component which is called profile. What does that mean? Well, I told you DBX can help you to orchestrate your Databricks workflow, your development workflow, to deploy your codes through multiple environments, not just one Databricks, multiple Databricks, right? So it is asking me that which Databricks you want to connect to. You can call it dev Databricks. Here I'm calling it MG Databricks, but that can be dev Databricks. Then I can provide the token of the dev Databricks workspace and then get connected to that. And then I can say, let's say, prod token Databricks, and the same thing. Now I have authenticated to the prod workspace as well. So profile here, consider profile like your development environment or deployment environment, right? So here I'm not going through to talk about the CI/CD with DBX. Here, just make it simple. I have just one Databricks connected to, I can call it just MG. And then it's gonna ask me, okay, I think it's gonna ask me okay, let's see what's gonna ask me. Okay, Databricks host, I told you that you need to copy the URL of your Databricks. You know what, actually I forgot to copy mine. So let me copy mine for a second. There you go, let me drag it up. Alright, copy. This is mine. And then token. Sorry, you cannot see my token and it won't even show it. So I copy this, I paste it here, Control V, press enter. There you go. Now the configuration of authenticating to Databricks is done. So what is next? Let's do a quick test to make sure now we are connected to that Databricks. Let's say I want to list the objects that I have in my Databricks workspace from here. Okay, let's do it. What is the command line? There you go. We say Databricks profile MG, so it knows which Databricks I'm talking about, MG Databricks. List my workspace. Let's do this. There you go. My users shared repo. Excellent. So now at least I'm sure that now I'm connected to my Databricks. Now let's start working with DBX. Okay, so how are you gonna initiate DBX? Well, you can just simply type DBX init. What it will happen is, let's see, it will open up, there you go, my Databricks DBX environment, and start to initialize it. So the first question gonna ask me, give it a project name. Let's say it's whatever, MG. Version, let's keep it as is. It's version 1. And by the way, you can versionize your projects. This is a great capability of DBX. That's why it's the first version. First version. I'm okay with that. Select your cloud. Is it AWS, Azure, GCP? Well, the reason that it asks because it will come up with some code templates for me. So if I say Azure, I'm using Azure. If you use others, choose another one. Let's say I want to go with number 2. Okay, let me move this a little bit up so you can see what's happening on the downside. There you go. Okay, select your CI/CD tool. Again, it's gonna give me some templates. For example, if I want to use GitHub Actions for my CI/CD pipelines, I can select number 1, but you have other options here. Project select, let's go with default MG, workspace directory. This is the workspace directory under my Databricks. Let's call it as is. And here, the artifact location that I'm gonna use is my Databricks. By default is Databricks file system, which is not a good practice. It's better to attach your Databricks to a disk. Let's say if you're using Azure, attach it to a blob and use that as your artifact location. But here again, for a test, you're good to go with Databricks file system. And the profile, we're gonna use MG. Why? Because this is a project that I'm initializing to later on deploy to the MG connectivity we created on the top. Again, that can be dev, prod, whatever. Okay, it's sort of configuring the environment for me, and now it has created some folders for me under Muhammad G folder. What is the name of that folder? It's the name of the project. What was the name of the project? It was MG. So let's go to that profile, to the folder. There you go. So let's take a quick look of the folders and files that DBX created for me and quickly check out what they are, so to have a better sense of what we are doing before we resume the coding here. Alright, here are I am under MG folder. This got created as soon as I initiated my DBX. So you see there's MG folder, and then after that, these sort of templates and code got created for me. Let's check out what is DBX. Well, DBX, you don't have to actually put your specific codes, files, and folders here, because this is the auxiliary folder for DBX related stuff, right? Some information about your project. Actually, let's take a quick look. For example, if I open it, there you go, clicking on project. Oh, sorry, it opened which VS Code in another screen. There you go, some specific information like the artifact location we specified, and it asked me the profile name. So that's it. Do not add any stuff here. So going back to MG, what is GitHub? Well, it gave me some workflow or CI/CD codes examples based on the CI/CD tool I selected. Remember, it asked me, are you using Azure DevOps or using GitHub Actions? I said GitHub Actions, and there you go. It gave me 2 samples of GitHub Actions. So for example, this one on push. Let me open that. Okay, it opened in a notepad, but that's okay. So it is actually a GitHub action that will get executed as soon as someone create a push. So as you can see in GitHub action with the keyword on, you can say that on what time or when you're gonna execute this pipeline. It says until someone push. So continuous integration pipeline. And then what about CD pipeline or continuous deployment? That's the time when someone do a release, this CD pipeline should get executed. That's why it is called on release. And if I open it, you see that on push, then this is gonna get executed based on release pipeline. Again, we can just later on check that out, use your extended, but I think this is a great way to start since you already have the template here. All right, what else we have here? Okay, let's talk about configuration folder. So we do have 2 type of configuration when it comes with DBX. We have the deployment configuration, this is the YAML file, and we have the task configuration that it has its own YAML files. Then what is the difference between tasks configurations and deployment configurations? Well, deployment configuration is responsible for clusters, dependencies, and orchestration configuration, right? But the task configuration here is the configuration related to your codes. Let's say, for example, I have an ETL code that we're going to actually run it from our local machine to Databricks, and it has some parameters that should pass to it, right? So then you're going to specify them in the task configuration. Let me open up to show you actually. There you go. Here, for example, I have 2 type of variables that need to get passed to my ETL code, which is not here, but this is the configuration file of them. So this is the place to put your configurations file, stuff, and that's the way you go. Okay. Okay, what is MG folder? The most important folder here. I'm kidding. So this is the name of the project that I chose. So if you choose another name, you will have the same name here for this folder. So what is it? This is the directory with the package related codes, right? So if I open this up, there's actually an init function here. Let me open it. So here I can specify the version of the package, let's say, that I am developing using this syntax, right? And also there is another common.py code developed for me. It said common because that's a common code that you most likely use in any project. So what is that common code? Let me open that up. So here DBX is providing for me useful classes here, for example, class task. For further task implementation that I can do here, it's a great way to start. So here, consider this like a template that it contains the code that is required to initialize a PySpark session and set up the logging stuff, right? So you don't need to develop from scratch. It's already available for you here. That's why it's called common.py. And of course, I told you that we're gonna deploy some codes to Databricks from here, right? Or we call it tasks. And of course, my task gonna be here. For example, here I have a sample ETL. This is the one I'm gonna actually launch it. And there you go. Let's see what this one is doing. So it's a class that is sort of configuring some Spark related and then grabbing it, the Spark data frame, using the California housing scikit-learn. That's it. Honestly, I think it's just loading this scikit-learn data. Pretty simple, right? So this is the one that we're gonna test locally and then deploy to Databricks workspace. Okay. So let me go back and see what else we have. I think we almost talked about everything. Like, okay, the notebooks, I mentioned that doesn't mean you must use .py codes or modularized codes. In this folder, like here, for example, there's a sample notebook that show me how to use DBX written code from a Databricks repository or Databricks repo. You can check that out. There you go. It's pretty simple. Going back to MG, okay, test. This is the place that I can keep all the tests related to this project. So there is no specific requirement to store the tests in this folder, but it's a good practice to have them here. And again, you might ask what type of different tests we have. We have end-to-end tests, we have integration tests, sample tests. Honestly, depends on a specific type of project you are doing. You might have different kind of unit tests as well. So navigate to these, check them out. There are differences here, and you might don't need any of them or all of them based on the use case, but you have something to start. Okay. Let's say before I deploy my codes stuff to Databricks, I want to do a quick test, run my unit test locally on my machine, right? And as you might know, with running PyTest command line, I should be able to write down my unit test and sort of check out the results of my code evaluation. Before doing so, I checked out the guideline in DBX website, and it said that before executing the unit test stuff, install the dependencies needed for this your local machine environment. So this is why I'm executing this from this template or example that I'm running from their website. And afterwards, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna run the unit test and then store the results in an HTML file, which is optional. You don't need to store them in HTML file. They can be shown in this command line here, but just to make it nice and show you the art of possibilities, I'm gonna do so. So let me copy that command line. There you go. As soon as this installation is done, I can run my unit test. Let's give it a couple of seconds. There you go. And then let's run. Okay, here I'm running PyTest, the folder test. There's a unit test under, and then I want to have the results reported in HTML. Let's check out. Okay, I might pause the recording in case it's gonna take longer. Then I resume the recording again, or actually, you know what? Let it go live. See what's gonna happen. Okay, let me up. Okay, it's doing some specific configurations. So far, so good. Okay, it seems like there were some errors, but let me scroll down. But actually, it says that the results is written in HTML folder. Okay, let's check it out actually. Okay, so there you go. There's a folder created for me, and where's the okay, it seems like there are multiple HTML files created for me. There you go. I assume this is the unit test result for my sample ETL task, right? Let me open it. Oh, interesting. Yeah, it seems like it has done something, some missing stuff, number of runs. All right, perfect. So let's get back to this command line. Now that's the main step, which is we already talked about how we can deploy our codes to Databricks from my local machine. Well, let's do this. What I'm gonna do, so I'll be posting this command line and let's see what it's gonna do. So dbx deploy, that means I want to deploy what? MG ETL, sample ETL. Well, where that this name coming from? Well, MG is certainly the name of the profile and project I created, but then sample ETL, let me show you actually how it come from. Remember I told you that there is a folder called config or conf, which is very important. That's the place you specify your deployments, right? So this is the DBX folders and configuration. I do have deployment folder, sorry, file. And under that, I do have multiple workflows specified here, and one of them is mg sample ETL specified for me, and I want to execute this. And because it has been already defined in my deployment, when I actually call this, so it knows actually what task I'm going to run. And I told you that we do have another configuration file for tasks that talks about the variables and parameters we can use them as an input for our .py codes, which we need to define them in our task YAML file, which is specified here. And actually I can show you, this is specified in task, which is here, right? Okay, let's execute this and see what's gonna happen. So I'm expecting to have this sample ETL task that we talked about it get created as a job in my Databricks workspace. So far so good. I don't see any issues. Let's wait a bit. So it's building the package, uploading it, and there you go, finished successfully. Then let's check out our Databricks and see what happened there. Here's my Databricks workspace. Let's go to the workflows. And there you go, mg sample ETL is already created as a job. I can actually execute it, and if we open it, we can check out further information. Who is the owner? No specific task has been on it. So it has been defined as a job for now, but not executed yet. So how we can sort of do a quick execution, maybe not only from UI but also from your local machine, again using dbx. Now I can use the similar command line, but instead of saying dbx deploy, now this time I would say dbx launch. Let's check out. There you go, it says that it's successfully found and it's running successfully, and it's even giving me the run URL, but I should be able to, oh, there you go, it got green. That means it got automatically triggered from my local machine using dbx. I was able to sort of run it. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, this dbx has a lot of capabilities. We just talked about a very naive and high level capability, just running some unit tests and then deploying the code on Databricks. But at least the main the main goal on this video was about giving you the awareness of this capability and what you can achieve, but what is the workflow, what are the benefits, and see sort of a portion of the capabilities in action. But if you're interested to know more about how we can still leverage DBX in other scenarios, we talked about utilizing it DevOps, more advanced scenarios. Those examples need their own dedicated videos. So if you're interested to know further on those, please write down in the comment section. More than happy to create more content for you there. That's it. We are not our intentions. We are what we do. Dream big, my friends, and take action. Take care, and we'll see you shortly in the next video. Bye for now.